I hope you all had a good lunch and still wide awake for this last and final session that we're having. As you can see, for the last 2 days, we've been having very heated discussions and very good speakers. And the issues are still there, many issues. We try to take up as many issues as possible, but there are so many issues so that we decided that we'd bunch them all up in the last session and have some experts speak on them. So we have this time in this open forum, the issues that we have taken up are special status for Goa, the upcoming international airport, which has become such a big bed of controversy, and public transport in Goa, which I think was briefly touched upon in the morning session. So now may I invite Advocate Ramakant Halak, former Union Law Minister, former Deputy Chairman, Goa State Planning Board, and former Chairman, Goa Law Commission, to speak about special status for Goa.
Good afternoon. At the outset, let me thank Madam Nandini and the International Center Goa, first for organizing this meet, and number two, inviting me to participate in this. Special status of Goa is an issue which is being debated for quite some time. I am a votary supporter of this demand. Let me make it clear at the outset. But then also I would like to refer to certain aspects of the Constitution of India and a bit of history to which we all went through. Of course, these things are not new to you. My thoughts go back to independence of India. British were told to go away. Of course, they decided to go away from India. And they left behind virtually shall I call it confederation? I don't have a better word. Of numerous princely states. And then we all know the police action that took place. And all that was assimilated into one part, of course, Pakistan is another issue. That's how we had India. If this police action was extended to Goa in 1947, if it was extended to, let's say, Mahe and Pondicherry, other places, like all other small or big princely states, these two tiny hamlets would also have become part of what we have India before us. And subsequently, as time went on and the reorganization of states took place, like Sawantwadi next door, the princely state became part of Maharashtra. Or Cochin and Travancore became part of Kerala. Or Hyderabad became part of Andhra Pradesh. Probably we too, Goa might have become part of another big state. Could have been Maharashtra, could have been Karnataka, could have been something else. Probably a Konkan state. But that didn't happen because the rulers were foreigners. And India decided not to touch them. Well, in course of time we became independent. Then the war started for merger and non-merger. Results are known. We went towards union territory status, then to statehood. Now we are demanding special status. And why are we demanding special status? The other day the Chief Minister, while speaking on this issue in the Assembly, said, I am not demanding special status for getting some special economic package from the Government of India. And he also said that I am not making this statement to make Goa into some sort of an independent country. He said, we want to save our real estate, our land, virtually go off our goals. So the whole thing finally boiled down to this one aspect, that Goa needs special status so that our land remains in our hands. How and what way, of course, it is yet to be spelled out. So my thoughts, start revolving. When you say that the Goan land must be retained by Goans, of course the first finger points at me, when you say about it, it points towards you, at every individual Goan. What have we all done to our own land over the years? We went about selling our lands. Not just small pieces. Some of us who were endowed with larger tracts of land saw that we could make more money. And down all these 50-55 years that have passed by, we have invited people from everywhere. Not only people from across our borders from different states of this country, but people also from abroad. And they purchased land here. We sold these lands to them. We are talking about mega projects. We are opposing those mega projects. And now, as if we have awakened from a dream, we now point out to a class of people whom we describe as violence. Nandini ji, you are one of them. And probably if you try to buy a piece of land somewhere or acquire a small apartment, there may be some people looking at with those angry eyes at you. And at who will be the seller? Seller will be one Goan. This aspect somehow we forget. So I have been trying to advocate, trying to impress upon these successive governments. When I was within those hallowed walls of the legislature, as well as outside, that pending this so-called special status, can we retain something of Goa for Goans? By whatever means. And what are those means? I am referring to this means because special status is not a thing which can come out just by a few demonstrations or demands or conferences of this nature. It's a complex issue. Our country itself is complex. We have accepted a polity which gives almost equal rights to all the states. And some exceptions have been carved out. Kashmir on one end and Goa is at the other end in terms of special status. Article 370 at the other day, once again after a long hibernation, LK Advani has made once again a demand. He says, let's scrap Article 370. Let me not touch the political part, but he made that demand after a long period of hibernation. And herein we go making a move towards a special status. So we want one state to give up its special status, and we want a special status for ourselves. And in between Goa and Kashmir, we have the northeastern states, like the Nagaland, Mizoram, Assam. They have a special status. No law of parliament is applicable to them in respect of certain aspect. One of them, important aspect, is the land, unless the local legislature passes a resolution to effect. And we have states like Karnataka, states like Maharashtra, Gujarat. They do have some sort of a special status. When these states were reorganized on linguistic basis, chunks of land, chunks of some areas, different areas, from different states, different provinces of the past, were put together. For example, Bombay province, as you know, extended all the way from Kutch down to Tamil Nadu. And central provinces had Vidarbha and Marathwada in their part, and even Andhra Pradesh or Hyderabad, Karnataka, all those things. So these were reorganized, and while reorganizing, it was decided that certain parts of these newly formed states should be given certain privileges. And the one privilege was that their development should not be lopsided. So development boards were envisaged. So we don't fit in the Kashmir model, because that was because of the Razakars and all that matter that took place there. And Hari Singh entering into a instrument of accession with Government of India, asking for aid, and that's how certain privileges were given to that state. Nagaland, Mizoram, a long history of insurgency. And a history of also that peculiar culture, language, religion, customs, usages, legal system, all was there, so far as Nagaland and Mizoram were concerned. So they were protected. So we have Andhra, Goa, Andhra, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, some privileges regarding certain aspects of it. Kashmir, another story, North is another story. Where do we fit in? Where does Goa fit in? If the parameters of development or social indicators are taken into consideration, every year our chief ministers go to Delhi, whether it is this chief minister or the previous chief minister, and they come out with decorations. Goa, best place in terms of child mortality, best place in terms of sex ratio, best place in terms of health indicators, per capita income, what have you not. So each year we come with medals, trophies, that we are the best among the rest. So if you are the best among the rest, how do you qualify for a special status? This is the question. So therefore, as the Chief Minister said, that ultimately the question boils down to retaining this piece of land, 3,000 odd kilometers that we have, inherited because of the Portuguese. I call it a historical accident that took place. If the Marathas had not ceded Perne and Satari and Bisholi, and if Sonde had not ceded Karwar and other places, Kankod and other places, probably Goa would have been a tiny little real Supule place, restricted to English and perhaps part of Salsette. So this historical accident that took place, we got the present boundaries. Well, if you want to retain this, the rest of the country went ahead with certain laws. There were Rajas, there were Maharajas, there were Zamindars, there were landholders who owed villages. Not one, many of them. So land ceiling laws were made applicable for us. Did we go for it? Blame anybody. But the fact remains that we did not go for it. We said, okay, if a Desh Prabhu owns whole of Perne, so be it. If Depo owns another taluka, so be it. That's what we said. And then we went about law reforms, land reforms. We adopted the great principle that there should be no absentee landlordism. The tiller should become the owner. 64 we did this. And I have been saying, should there be no end to this relationship of serfdom? If at all we go by this principle of saying that a person who toils, who sweats, who works in his fields, should be the owner, make him the owner, jolly well make him the owner. Government has money to spend on so many things. If that gentleman has no money to pay, then create a fund and pay it. The law says this. There's a provision in the law. We didn't do it. And no conferences of this like this are held to force upon the government to adopt that principle. An unfortunate part is no political party comes out with any manifesto for the last 20 years I have watched, with a commitment to this cause, if it is a cause. If it is not a cause, give it. Toss it over to the Arabian Sea and say, okay, no landlord system, no tenant system. It will be only a license system. I will own the land and whoever wants to cultivate will cultivate it at whatever fees I want to charge. But that also we don't do it. We have people coming from different places. I come from Perne. And I'll give you a few examples. Whole of my Terekol village has been sold. Entire village has been sold. And people involved there were politicians. People involved there were fly-by-night agents and even clergies, if I make this statement. What right do we have? When the whole village of 40 houses there, who inherited from what was from ages, no action is being taken. A village called Alorna, almost 10 lakh square meters village, sold entirely. With its temples, churches, kapels, whatever. What do you call that? Kapel, I mean. Sorry. Chapels. Crosses. Gumdeo. Wells. Schools. Playgrounds. Panchayat office. Lock, stock, barrel. There's a seller and there's a buyer. End of it. And so on and so forth. The other day I was in Sattari, trying to check out on a certain property mortgage to one of the institutions which I am running. And a neighbor comes running, speaking in some Endo-Urdu language, which I couldn't make out. And he says, you are trespassing through my property. I said, who the hell you are? Who the hell you are? So some through little bit of Konkani, little bit of Hindi, little bit of English, we try to communicate, and he said, I have bought all this. So what for you want special status? This is the question. Is it not possible to bring about a law which says, okay, you will hold so much of agricultural land and not more, so much of this urban land and no more, and put that entire surplus land into a bank, land bank, and hold it for the posterity, for the new generations of Govans. Make it difficult. I'm sorry, my political companions from both sides of the camp are trying to misguide Govans. Not just misguiding Govans, it is an attempt, a filthy attempt to stick to the chairs by rousing passions of the people. You think it is not, our leaders do not understand that it is difficult to really amend the constitution. And what are the parameters? Has anybody described the parameters of the special status? I asked for a white paper on this issue. In a public statement, I told the Chief Minister, please provide a white paper on what exactly you mean by the special status for Goa. Let's all understand it. Nobody bothered to answer it. I told the MLA, I said, you are in the assembly, please ask for this. Or at least you spell out, as the opposition, you spell out what exactly you want by special status. Because everybody seems to be endorsing. Nobody speaks about it. So unfortunately, these are the ways and means by which we are going ahead. Entire coastline today has left our hands, passed on to others. Now when I say this, people will say, oh, Mr. Khala, after having been the Law Minister of India, today it talks about preventing non-Govans from coming into Goa. I don't know, that's not my meaning. That's not what I want to say. Definitely not. I believe in the integrity of this country. I believe in the right of every Indian to go and settle wherever he wants. But then, within the powers that the Constitution has given to each legislature, we are in a position to control the sale, transfer, alienation of our resources. We haven't done that. Mining issue was debated. It was not difficult at all to have a corporation here which would go ahead and do the mining. We have not done that. We talk about, when it comes to airports, I'm not transgressing on the issue, but when we talk about an airport, some of us point to the defense forces and say, they're occupying so many lakhs of square meters of land. And you turn deliberately a blind eye to acres and acres of government land being sold out. Just a couple of days back, I read an advertisement in the Times of India, issued by a company based in Calcutta. Warning, the public notice, warning the people in general that company owns some 7-8 lakhs of square meters in Concord. And the ad says that some XYZ is trying to trespass into it. When we pass our budget, and when we talk about providing shelter to every Goan, has it not been possible for us to think that these large chunks of land could be taken over by the government? Isn't the Land Acquisition Act available to us for this purpose? And is it not possible even to amend that Land Acquisition Act in a suitable way, that when this surplus land is taken over by the government for posterity, the land loser is also given adequate compensation? We don't do this. We are treating the defense forces as a flogging horse. Because sometimes, somewhere within us, that feeling of uniqueness, a feeling of separatism couched in love for the state, is being exhibited to denounce and denigrate our forces. We should be proud that our armed forces have done human services for this country. Even today, when Uttarakhand is suffering because of a natural calamity, none of us could go there, none of us will be able to go there. Our defense forces are protecting our people. And if God forbid, if something happens in the Arabian Sea, some aggression, we people who go about in our fugdis and our sanyas and our shikmas, brandishing those various kinds of Lilliputian weapons, we won't be able to fight them. So therefore, special status. Madam Mandriji and my friends, let us look at it in two ways. Who doesn't want to be called a unique person? Which state doesn't want to be called, have to be given a special status above the rest? Special privilege above the rest? Nitish Kumar is asking for it. So many others are also asking for it. But then when the parliament takes a decision, the parliament will not be looking at one state, it will be looking at the entire country. And that entire country has millions of problems before it. The recent agitation going on for Telangana, don't you think it is difficult for the parliament to pass a law and give them a special state, separate state? And it is not being done. Political party after political party is taking, very overt and covert steps to hide exactly what their intention is. The fear is if you give Telangana today, Vidarbha is the next, Marathwada is the second line, Uttarakhand another 2 divisions. Kashmir, already there are talks that we have Ladakh, we have Jammu, we have Kashmir. Entirely different entities. And my friends, if some of us are entertaining such notions of being unique in the whole country, then let me tell you, please check this notion. Every Indian is unique. Every region is unique. Moment we cross the Ghats and go up to Ramnagar, it's a unique place and a unique population. Moment we go down to Karwar, it's a unique place and a unique region also. So if you go on tom-tomming our uniqueness and try to sacrifice our unity and integrity of our country on that basis, God save this great land. Thank you very much.
After such an emotional and passionate plea for special status, I don't think that must left, but still I'm sure there'll be lots and lots of questions. I have one to ask, but I'll keep it for the last. Now can I ask Father Amito Rebello, former professor of philosophy and Reshore Seminary, presently rector at the Shrine of the Blessed Joseph Vaz, Sankol, and convener of Goan for Dabolim only, to speak on Dabolim only.
Respectful Chairperson, dignitaries of the dais, ladies and gentlemen. When I speak here, I don't speak on my personal behalf alone. We are a team, and there are experts among us who understand technical things, activists and others. So I'm speaking here on behalf of all of us Goans for Daboli only. Instead of speaking about Daboli or Mopa, we must talk rationally of Goa's air traffic needs. How much is traffic need today? It is 3.5 million pax a year. How much is the current capacity of Daboli? It is 3.5 million. But a new terminal of 6 million capacity will be inaugurated by September 2013. So, from this tourist season, Daboli can handle 9.5 million pax. What has the experts to say? ADPI report states that in 2035, air traffic will be 7.13 million, whereas ICAO report states 9.27 million. Both say less than 9.5 million, which is the expanded Daboli capacity. That means Daboli is sufficient till 2035 or next 22 years. Even reserving 5 hours, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. exclusively for Navy, the runway has the capacity to handle 18 million pax, considering 20 movements per hour and 130 pax craft. Runway capacity is sufficient much beyond 2035. Apron after present expansion will see through for 20 years. When Daboli Airport can cater for next 20 years, why the haste for second airport at Mopa? There are many imponderables in airport planning. First, is crude oil availability and its price, and the effect thereof on airline fare, and hence the growth. Second, technology advancement leads to obsolescence of equipment and facilities. India's ministerial group has therefore limited airport planning to 10 years. Planning an airport too much in advance can lead to collapse of economy if assumed growth does not become reality. Goa does not have a transportation policy. It is addressing the issues on piecemeal basis. Skybus and Sealink wasted public money. Kadamba is making losses. Though bestowed with many rivers, Goa's inland river navigation is neglected. Neither feasibility nor mandatory EIA study has been done for Mopa Airport. Experts at ICAO and ADPI said that two airports are viable only when the air traffic is 24 million pax. Goa's current traffic is 3.5 million, or 2035 estimated traffic of 9 million is nowhere near it. Two airports at this stage is sheer waste of state's land resources. Why does Goa want to use 84 lakh square meter greenfield land at Mopa when similar ends can be met with mere 1 or 2 lakh square meter brownfield land at Davoli? Is this not a criminal waste of scarce land, especially in Goa, where everyone is craving for land? In 2011, Goa government returned vital land required for airport to private builders. Kindly listen carefully. There is 30,800 square meter vacant plot outside the airport. It is the only plot left abutting the airport. In 2006, Goa government committed to acquire it and hand over to the airport authority. Government promulgated Section 4 for land acquisition in 2009 and Section 6 in 2010. Also keep in mind that this plot was not meant merely for parking, but also for city-side airport infrastructure, office buildings, parking, cargo warehouses, airline backup, etc. But in 2011, government surprisingly denotified this land, survey number 8/1, Davoli village, in spite of Airport Authority of India pleading otherwise. Basis of denotification was also false. Landowner said he requires that land for family's use. But now, huge construction is taken up by builders. Murmugaon PDA said alternate 70,000 square meter plot is available. Acquisition of this alternate land was precondition for denotification. But while builders were given conversion sanats expeditiously, the government is yet to locate this alternate land even after 2 years. This land, the alternate, belongs to Defense Ministry, but was falsely stated as private land in the cabinet notice. This was the last piece of vacant land for city-side facilities. Once blocked with residences, it would preclude further expansion beyond 2035. This land is strategic and vital for the airport. The public purpose for airport has much higher priority than residences. So much so that even if buildings come up, they ought to be demolished. Government must acquire this land once again. By depriving the airport of this vital land, the government is strangulating Daboli and making an artificial case for Mopa. In this background, what right does the Goa government have to blame the Navy? The statement that Goa government is not investing money in Mopa airport is false. Market value of land, which is over 4,000 crores, and the money to be spent on 6-lane Kanakona-Perne Expressway are just two examples of Goa government's massive investment in the airport project. It is evident that a number of fraudulent statements, arbitrary theories, and decisions have misled the government into taking the absolutely wrong decision to build a second airport for tiny Goa. All the studies carried out by experts and the relevant data available in public domain are unanimous that Daboli Airport is not only the prime mover of Goan economy, but is also sufficient for perpetuity. The proposal for Mopa Airport is not only arbitrary and unnecessary, but will definitely destroy Goa's economy unless stopped right now. Further, this experience should be a lesson for future governments to first carry out sincere socio-economic and environmental studies before planning major infrastructure, and to guard public interest against speculation and to guard public interest against speculation and short-term profits of a few. I have said it. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, for your very logical and detailed argument, but we'll discuss that afterwards. I'd like to invite Mr. Arun Desai now, Director of Transport, Government of Goa, to talk about the public transport system of Goa.
I'm here to take an overview of the transport department and not the transport department, but the public transport only as far as Goa is concerned. It would take around 10 to 12 minutes to go through this presentation. Where we discuss the modes of public transport, statistics, major issues, present status, solution from my point of view, and challenges ahead. In public transport, we have yellow and black motorcycle taxis, which are 1,351 in number. Then we have yellow-black auto rickshaws, about 4,000. Yellow-black taxis, 558. Public transport buses, mainly from two different agencies. One is KTCL, which counts for around 390 buses, and private buses, 1,550. Apart from this and private, there are two more things which are there. They are taxis and rent-a-bike motorcycles, but of course they don't fall in public transport per se. There are the statistics regarding the total volume of vehicles that we have in Goa. So overall transport, we have around 9,38,000. For a population of 16 lakhs as of now, it's quite thick as far as the overall situation in the country is concerned. we have about 6.5 lakhs of two-wheelers. And it is very significant from the point of view of failure of public transport. I would say that mainly this rise in number of this one is because of failure of public transport. The major issues I've seen that as far as the motorcycles are concerned, the motorcycle pilots, what we have yellow black motorcycles, we hardly have any issues. They are giving excellent work. As far as yellow black auto rickshaws are concerned, we have certain issues and overcharging and non-functioning of fare meters, which is complementary to each other, and they try to manage it that way. Anyhow, of late, I would like to inform you that we have come up with a solution to this, that they would be charging hereafter point-to-point charges, which will be notified maybe in weeks' time. So probably that will take care of this particular issue. Then, as far as the public transport, that is buses are concerned, we have a lot of issues. I have enumerated some of them. The basic thing is that we don't have something called as round-robin trips, which normally we find that it starts from one place, then covers number of places, and then go back to its this one in the evening. But we have this regular two trips, one in the morning, one in the evening, which is very inconvenient as far as the village life is concerned. A lack of qualified local drivers and conductors. To my surprise, when I asked them, the operators, they are unable to tell their names, who is the driver. And sometimes it's so shocking that they tell, he is known as Batato. This is a fact. Though we feel laughing, but it is a fact. A large number of operators, as I said, we have around 15 to 1600 buses, 15 and a half actually, 1550 buses that have been operated by about 1200 people, because there are 1200 owners of those buses. And of course 390 buses, the Kadamba Corporation is buying. Violation of motor vehicle acts and rules is rampant. Just to give you a figure, because we have some friends in media, who regularly sends me SMS regarding violations, and we don't do anything. I would just like to inform this gathering that the challans issued by Transport Department to buses, that is public carriage, stage carriage buses, from 1st of January till 31st of May is 1636. So for God's sake, we have at least stopped 1600 buses and checked them. Next comes old permits issued. There is a typical issue that forbids us from starting any new route or giving any new permit on a particular route, because the Motor Vehicle Act envisages that in case we want to do any change or any additional permit or any extension to the existing permit, all the operators who are running have to be heard. And if you issue them a single notice, in one voice they only say one thing, that we don't want any additional bus. It will hamper my business. And all these permits are issued around 30-35 years back. Next is replacement of 49 and 54 seater buses. See, government has come up in 2002 with the scheme of Goa bus replacement scheme to upgrade the environment situation in Goa. Replacement of old buses which are 15 years old, 20 years old. But it has affected the public transport system at large, because all the buses then they were flying had a passenger capacity of about 76, because a 54-seater bus is permitted to have around 20 passengers, standing passengers, 40% of its seating capacity. So a 76-seater bus has been literally replaced due to this scheme by a bus with a carrying capacity of 35 seats or 39 seats, which is just half of the earlier one. So it has created a lot of problems. Then lack of comfort, reliability is another issue, and lack of effective management. As the number of buses sold by an operator are 1 or 2 or maximum 3, it becomes very difficult for them to manage it. So in one sentence, if I have to say, about the situation or the present status, neither KTCL nor private operators are able to provide reliable, efficient, effective, affordable and safe public transport. People find alternative arrangements in the form of two-wheelers, and that's how the number of two-wheelers has increased. For every year we are adding to around 50,000 two-wheelers to our vehicle population. Next comes a solution which I thought could work, and if it works it will definitely do wonders, is PPP, that is management PPP in public transport. Because PPP are two types. One is capital incentive where people have to invest a large sum of money. Here the investment could be very limited to the extent of just management. The idea is very simple, to form a special purpose vehicle with all these operators, individual operators, and also the KTC buses linked to it. Reorganize the existing routes. See, now what happens is a bus that starts from village, a minibus, comes directly up to the city, that is Panjim or Margam, which we can avoid by reorganizing these routes into two forms which I have given. That is, one is village to town. All minibuses can ply and they can do number of trips. Now what happens is, from a village like Savevere, in the morning we have around 2 or 3 buses which starts maybe from 7:30 to 8:30 max. And a person, a student also has to travel in the same, a teacher also has to travel in the same, a person going to market also has to travel in the same bus, a person having appointment at 11:30 or 12 o'clock in Ponda also has to compulsorily catch that bus. And otherwise the alternative is own boat. So I think if we do it from village to town, all these minibuses making number of trips, maybe if there are 2 now they can take 4, and from town to city, all big buses. I have taken an example of Panjim to Ponda. In a day there are 110 buses, 10 trips that are made. So around 55 buses ply, and if you go for this system, I think we can reduce it by around 30%. And reduction of 30% of buses at that stretch would ease the traffic like anything. Then owners have to provide all these buses when they are linked to that special purpose vehicle. The owner has to provide a driver and he has to maintain the bus. Special purpose vehicle to pay assured kilometers per day. If he is flying for 150 kilometers today, he has to be assured of that 150 kilometers, and he is to be paid per kilometer. Cost plus 15% of the profit for each particular day's running. Special purpose vehicle to provide diesel and conductor with an ATM. Most of the buses do not have these qualified conductors. And it's very unfortunate that no local guy would like to go for a job of a conductor. And we don't have, I think, in all these 1600 buses that we are flying, hardly there would be 100 to 150 conductors would be qualified conductors and go-ons. Operations to be planned and managed professionally by this special purpose vehicle. The only question would come then would be of viability gap funding. But I think the government, which gives almost around 35 to 40 crores to KTCL, which caters for, just you have seen the number, around 25% of the public transport, if we can spend 40 crores, I think the amount that would be required in viability gap funding would be to the tune of around 25 to 30 crores. So with that, definitely we will be able to do wonders. Just for your information, I would like to say the passenger kilometer rates for a two-wheeler, it is 2 rupees 50 paisa, thanks to that reduction of VAT. Otherwise it was 2 rupees 75 paisa per passenger kilometer. As far as four-wheelers is concerned, it comes to about 4 rupees 75 paisa. Whereas if we have a public transport, efficient public transport service, it would cost us just 1 rupee 25 paisa. That is the difference. Next, the challenges as far as the solution is concerned, what could be? Issue regarding KTCL buses, because cost of their operation as on date is about 39 rupees per kilometer. As compared to a private operator who had come from Kanpona, the whole group came to me. They say we are ready to hire our buses for 12 rupees 50 paisa per kilometer per day with driver. the conductor amounts to further 4 rupees, 2.5 rupees, and the diesel cost would add to around 7 rupees per kilometer. So if you really see, in 22 to 23, if efficiently managed by maybe outer limit 25 rupees a kilometer, we can have public transport, efficient public transport system. But Kadamba, this one is around 40 rupees. Second thing is about 10 associations they have. None of them, seeing each other at the present status. I would have been happy if Mr. Tamakar would have been there. Anyhow, and then there are 1200 independent owners, the operators who own the bus. So bringing all of them together, a big Herculean task. Issues regarding permits to those who may not like to join. Either government has to buy their permits or give them some special package and sort of things. Then effective management and evaluation would be an issue, of course, but also can be done professionally. And the viability gap funding, as I said, is definitely a major issue. But I feel that it would be within the limits of what subsidy we are paying right now to KTCL. Lastly, a small message of our road safety: stay alive, don't get dry. Thank you.
Okay, now lastly can I ask Prakash Kamath to
I'll make a few observations on this special status issue. There is no doubt our land is scarce. We are a small state. We fail to protect our land. And second thing, I feel that definitely if creating a public awareness is a motto, it is welcome. Second thing is, have we missed the bus? My point is, it should have been, we got statehood. When we got statehood, I think that was the opportunity. Because in the under 370, we already got a special status. We got a special status to the extent that when you form the states, minimum seats for assembly are 60. Goa got special status to the extent that it is 40 MLAs. So politicians managed to expand their number of seats, but nobody bothered about this. Another aspect, definitely why I am saying this, I remember that Rajiv Gandhi, late Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister, and he had made 2 points. One, he said, settle your issue about your language, and then I will give you statehood. And I remember, before statehood, there was a statement in Rajiv Gandhi's statement saying that now you will have to be very careful, because suddenly you have become a state and now you will have to stand on your own feet, even in terms of finances. What happens is, when you are a union territory, your budget is completely looked after by the center. Almost 90% of your budget is taken care of. And suddenly when you become a state, your grants become 30% and your loans become 70%. So completely there is a drastic this. So both ways, economical viability, this aspect also should have been addressed at that time only, and also about this land issue, land being scarce, and that the problem of local people's interest being protected. This both we faced that time. Now when I see this, that now this issue is coming more of that, people are becoming more and more conscious, because the pressure on that scarce land is increasing. And we saw around a couple of years back, foreigners buying land mindlessly in contravention of FEMA Act. So that also came up, and that is why this kind of issue is now taking place. Now on the issue of airport, I think first thing what we have to welcome is people in Goa, they raise issues, because we have to see that development-wise, for example, Konkan Railway, when Konkan Railway came, there was agitation. Many people questioned the kind of development. I think in this country where there is completely no development, say in Bihar, now Bihar is developing, but I am saying in the earlier days, getting a railway line could be a development for those people who have not seen, they see that it is a kind of a development prospect. But for others who are themselves developed, may question the kind of development. Your development, idea of your development may be different than our idea of development. In that sense, if people debate development, if people debate projects which are being mooted by the state, it is a welcome sign. Definitely, we have to debate. But as far as this airport issue is concerned, I have one point. If I recall, before the previous election, this issue had come up in a big way. Then the Prime Minister, it was taken by the Congress government then to the Prime Minister. And after Congress realized that their own people were raising the issue in a big way and it could affect their own prospects, under Prime Minister, experts committee was set up. In that our MPs were also there. And they gave a solution to this dual airport issue. And after that, nobody heard any questioning of that. And now suddenly once again this issue is coming up. That is why people are wondering whether are these politically motivated issues. These are the debates, that is why the people are questioning it. There is no doubt that debate has to be there, but that is one. And earlier about Mr. Khalab, you said about have a comprehensive policy on anything. And when we do piecemeal things, then the people's protest start. And when the protests start, then we try to address the issues in a piecemeal. These are the basic issues. I think these aspects have to be understood. And as far as this transport thing is concerned, biggest problem of Goa is the congestion on roads. And because of huge vehicle population, and why it has happened is because of poor public transport system. We have not been able to address this transport system. I think Mr. Desai will have a lot of questions from participants. Thank you.
Well, the floor is open for questioning now.
The first issue which I would like to raise is about, it's an observation in terms of the special status. I think what is actually the question of special status is not that the Goans are annoyed with the domiciled Goans who have been here for the last 30, 40 years. No, definitely not. The issue of these outsiders came in only with the migrant population of 4 lakhs which has flooded Goa, and which of course has come here unwittingly because of the multiplexes that the politicians are propagating. Even now at the cost of RP21, the politicians have still gone on with the multiplexes. There's construction going on all over Goa, and we the citizens have got no voice. In spite of there being a Goa Bachao Abhiyan to raise voices against RP21, there's nothing being done as far as these issues. Now the thing is that as far as the migrant population, which is increasing by leaps and bounds, is because of the vote bank politics which is going on. And special status is really an issue not to drive away the domiciled Goans from outside who have come here and stayed here for the last 30, 40 years, who've contributed to the economy in a very good way, I must say. But we are against the migrant population. Now a lot of Goan boys, youngsters, people go to the Gulf for jobs. Yes, the migrants, we are agreeable that they come to Goa for jobs. We do not want to deny them their livelihood. But at the same time, we want to put a law in place, and which I have said several times, the entry and the exit of migrant labor should be registered, just like you register a foreigner. Foreigners' regional registration should be, and there should be, every builder should be forced to enter the name, the entry of every migrant. If the builder has got 30 people, 40 people, I think it should be recorded. So we are not against. It has to be regulated and monitored all the time, and we have to put an end to migrant population becoming citizens of Goa. And I think all those who have come illegally, and especially the foreigners who have bought land, I think the main problem was foreigners buying land in Goa illegally because the politicians encouraged it. It is not the Goans who have sold their houses and property. Okay, that's a small percentage. But I think the political hierarchy have been mainly responsible for the degradation and the sale of land to outsiders. And with a small area of 3,700 square kilometers, we do need land protection. We do need the Comunidad system to be re-effective instead of the law which has been amended of the tenancy law has not been.
What is your question?
Mine is an observation. I'm trying to make a statement that as far as special status, I'm not asking a question or I'm asking an answer.
On 16 January 1967, and what was his opinion that
on
day?
your side. I was on your side. In 1967, I was on your side.
Your side means you wanted
Whatever you are propagating.
whatever you are, I am not propagating anything. What I am asking is, if Goa had gone to Maharashtra, the question of special status would have never risen. And also I want your answer, what do you have to say about what Nehru said to us?
Are you trying to test my knowledge of history? Don't make irrelevant points. The question is, the whole gamut of my talk was simply this, that as he said, we missed the bus and we got a special status. I was just referring to the past history to say how historical excellence have landed us in today's situation. This is how I'm trying to bring it here. We are today because of historical excellence. I think that much will agree. Question now is getting a special status. We have missed the bus, no doubt we have missed the bus. Trying for it, no harm, let's try for it. But pending that, so we are getting it in 10 years from today or 20 years from today, can we save whatever land that we have for posterity? Of course, we are now, I'm 66 today. I don't know how old you are. But
I am 69,
69. Okay.
older than you are.
So exactly. So the coffins are waiting for us. All they're being made. But let us talk about the future, the next generation. So that's why I'm saying, let the fight go on, let the demands go on, let the political parties go on making the streets. But simultaneously, whatever land that we have, let's maintain it. All my 40 years of public life I've spent in telling my people, don't sell your land. It was possible for me to buy as much land in Madurai. It was possible for me to buy whole of Terekor. But I told the people, this is your land. Keep it for your posterity. Keep it for your children. But no. They don't wait. Some of them went to Bombay or other places. There they say, oh, my brother is enjoying my entire property. So I'll sell my share. So that's how it happened. So what are the ways? I didn't mention one aspect. Now, some years back, we got a population, a section of a population was declared as the scheduled tribes. And Constitution had the provision that the lands belonging to these scheduled tribes can be saved by declaring those areas where they reside and their land as special areas. And the governor can make a law preventing any sale of land belonging to these tribals to non-tribals. Why can't we do that? When last tax of land, when I mentioned these two villages, in income tax, supposing black money is used to buy certain things, or the valuation is shown less, these properties can be confiscated. So when a whole village is being sold, why can't my legislature, my government, forget about it, say that okay, that land is required for the purpose of future housing, for the future in that Terekor village. So I'll take over the land. And what is the compensation? The man has bought it for a certain price which is shown in the sale deed. And the government takes it over and pays him that sale deed price plus some interest over it for whatever time has gone. And the land belongs to the government. During the Portuguese time, a lot of lands belonging to the Portuguese were given for the purpose of amphitheatres and afromantos, with the condition that they will be cultivated. 20 years you pay the annuity and then you become the owner. Such lands have been sold away. Is it not possible to make a law amending that particular diploma, I think article, diploma?
There is already law there, but they are selling it. Affirmament cannot be sold. But now present government and the past governments have been selling
That is what you and I should demand. That's what I am saying.
Yeah, but who listens to us? Nobody
Just
listens.
go asking for special status when we can, we have some remedy in our hands. Without going to that remedy, we keep on, running after a mirage. This is the whole point I want to make.
As he has himself admitted that the transport system in Goa is in shambles, and the Department of Transport also has no power to control most of the things. So what I would like to know is that in the year 2000, we heard that there will be a transport system, railway system, SkyTrain, which was supposed to connect bigger cities in Goa. And that would have been the ideal thing. Can we not pursue the thing and connect all the big cities by that? And if you go to Europe, most of the airport, the moment you come out from the airport, you have got the metro train. And here what happens is that immediately you go into that and you go into the hands of those taxi operators and you know what is the effect. So you have no power over them. So what I would like to know that can we not pursue the thing and have, because all the cities, Bangalore, Bombay, they have this kind of transport. Why we cannot have it connecting all the big cities?
And there is something called as volume. Okay, I can tell you, Mamsa Panjim stretch or Panjim Margaon stretch is the stretch in Goa which has got the maximum capacity, passenger capacity in a day. But what happens is, if we have that mass rapid system, what it is called, what you are referring to, it could be a skybus, it could be metro, it could be anything. But it has to have not less than 7 times the present capacity that we have to be feasible.
But
That is the
decision was taken in 2000 that we will have a transport.
No, you are talking about monorail.
No, that's
Not the
skybus.
Skybus, we never had any this one. It was monorail that was in this one, but then it was withdrawn. And main reason was the volume.
I have a question for you. Why are we not using the waterways, which are so extensive over here? It'll cut the distance of so many places of Mandrahanga.
Yeah, though it doesn't fall in mind this one, I would like to answer it because we have floated expression of interest for cross mobility between waterways and land transport, and the tenders have been floated for that, for making use of that. Okay.
It's possible now since 90
Yeah.
is over.
From my understanding of the way tourism is going, if Goa is granted special status is when the government of India is confirmed that this is the corridor that they would prefer to have for tourism. If you look at the Karwar Seabird project and you look at Sindhudurg Tourism District, granting special status to Goa as a tourism area fits right into the plan of the World Tourism Organization. Worldwide, if you see, to grant special status for tourism projects, the best thing you require is to change the area. Either you call it a city-state like Singapore, and therefore, as you go in Sindhudurg, you can see now, it is a legislation. Sindhudurg is a tourism district, and 80 kilometers of the beach is a special tourism area. When it becomes operative, there will be only one collector, no village panchayats. So, my only point is that the special status demand that is being put forward right now is actually playing into the hands of the big business tourism lobby which wants this officially done. If you look at the present growth of tourism and the Mopa airport and everything, it fits in. When we raised the question of the Japanese holiday village and 8 golf courses in 1995, a lot of people were calling us conspiracy theorists. At that time, we were able to obtain the Tilhari irrigation project from Tokyo. So, my submission is that let the government of India present here to the government of Goa what are these plans for Goa. Because unless that is there, any amount of discussion really matter. Because there is a report in the government of India, Institute of Foreign Trade, that Goa should have a casino-based economy based on Macau model. These are the government of India reports. It's all written. So, however much we discuss about regional plan, etc., government of India will do what it wants for Goa. And that's why they say, Goa ka log ajib hai. Because finally, government of India implements what it wants. Others, let us examine. I, for one, will ask all those who are talking about Daboli or Moapa and special status, have an analysis of the bridge. why these bridges are being set up, why we want to have Sydney Harbour Bridge, why was the Aldana Bridge set up. Just go into the consultant reports and you'll see. You go to the Commonwealth Secretariat in London, they will tell you very clearly that any tourism project which has to be completed, the Commonwealth heads of government meeting is held in that place. It's all there. It is nothing new. So my contention is that what are becoming emotional project issues or what we are talking about is all laid down. We are only kind of announcing or heralding what is going to happen. Mopa Airport discussion is only happening. Today it's got a lot of focus. If you go and see when the Japanese holiday village was proposed in Arambol, it was already there. You can talk to Deshprabhu. Dr. Deshprabhu will tell you. So my contention is that why are we raising these issues today? And why are we not putting the question to the government of India? We are a federal state, I mean a country, Goa is part of the Indian Union. Let the Indian Union say what it has in store for us. Because this corridor is complete. The US 7th Fleet is not coming to MPT because they want to paint the Goa Medical College and roam around on the beaches. You look at the Seabird project, it's declared. It is declared as Asia's biggest naval project. It's a friendship port. All navies of the world will come there. And that's why the Hilton Hotel is there at Concon. Nobody goes to invest there if he doesn't know the plans of the next 50 years. So my contention is that to all those who are for against, please go to the government of India, look into their documents, get the tourism master plan of 1987 and you have your answers there. Very clear.
The government level finance says, okay, you want Macau, we'll give you Macau. This is what is happening here. We ourselves, with that false notions of our, uniqueness, our so-called asmitai, we have ruined ourselves in this whole issue.
And I would just like to raise 2 points. One is, few days back I read in the papers that the government of Japan wants to clean up the River Sal. I mean, are we idiots? Can't we understand what is going on? I mean, this is open. There was a big discussion, I remember, in Tavelosi, 1 minute, to shift that casino boat from there. It never had a jetty. It wanted a jetty. So it got a jetty in Mandovi. So let us look at agitations and look at their end result, where they are cooked, where they are planned, who has hashed them and how they get implemented. So I think time has come. We have gone a long way in activism, 30 years. And even if Matani was here today, he would have said the same thing. Because he had access to all the documents also. All the plans. So nothing is new. Government of India has not changed its position on MOPA or anything. Please, I would say, all those address the issues to the government of India. Let them present their ministry 50 years. And you will come to know why the regional plan is not finalized in Goa. And why 73rd and 74th amendment is not granted to the state of Goa. Because you want to make it a city state. Why will you give powers to a sarpanch and remove them tomorrow? Don't give it to him only. And don't take house tax. That's why house tax is reduced to 1 rupee. We can understand all these things. They are all scientific. They are not emotional.
I would just read it for you. We have it actually that do not use mobile phones while driving. It was in the second slide. As far as your question regarding training to the conductor is concerned, I am really trying hard to get some this one. In fact, I have written to Women Commission because I wanted to have their views on that because they were the people who have first complained about it, about their behavior. So I just written to them if they know any agency, and particularly their behavior with ladies was a big question mark. So I have written them, but now I'll try to find at our level, at directorate level, and we'll see to it that they are given some training.
So what is the qualification of a conductor? Because I don't think so any conductor is qualified.
I also said it. I think you missed it. I also said it. Out of 1550 bus conductors which are private buses have, 1400 of them are not qualified. The qualification for them is 10th pass, and they should have a badge issued by respective licensing authority.
Father, basically, I feel that whether it is roads, railways, all these things or means of communications are basically meant to connect and not to divide. So, and unfortunately in Goa, always these have become issues which have divided us. Unfortunately. Maybe I have not understood it properly, that's why I want just a little more explanation on that. You had made a statement once that the expressway will divide Goa. And today also you said that you linked MOPA to expressway. So fine, right now you are linking it to expressway, you are linking it to MOPA. There is one thing, and I don't know, could you just elaborate a little bit on that, exactly what you mean by that? And tomorrow, even if MOPA is scrapped, your objection will to expressway will remain?
Expressway, when I was delivering the talk, I meant to say that government is saying that it is not going to cost anything to the government. But government is going to lose a lot of its land, both at MOPA as well as over here by making the roads. And if you are speaking about dividing, the villages will be divided so much, no? That's what I was speaking about. But not, I didn't say anything about now. I said it before, that about the expressway dividing the people. But in the talk over here, I made reference to that only in case of expenditure. How much expenditure? The point I want to make is, government has to spend as far as the land is concerned. Have I made myself clear? I don't know.
No, I understood it. That, no, my question is that, are you opposed to expressway?
Expressway of 30, it is going to go around 60 meters, if I am not mistaken. The smallest expressway, no problem.
45, they have said.
Pardon me?
They have said 45.
So, how much land will be going over?
So basically, we should not lose land for roads.
No, we should have to.
Roads are meant to connect and not to divide.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you that.
So no more roads in Goa.
No, we need, surely, the traffic is.
Why? The land will go.
I don't mean to see giving up, not completely all the land, but we need land to be given to the roads as much as we can, but not so much of land. Do you understand what I mean to say?
I would just like this question also to be answered by Mr. Arun Desai. With so much of traffic in Goa, so many vehicles, are these roads enough?
I think if we have discipline on the road and effective, efficient, reliable public transport system, we can still do with the existing roads. But I would like to just make another point, that as far as the connectivity between north to south, like Pennai to Kanpur is concerned, or for that matter Panjim to Molang, this is a very important interconnecting road, if you take the national highways. So I think the national highway should be minimum 4 lane everywhere, because most of the places you get traffic congestion because of this national highway or the heavy traffic that is on the road. So as far as that point is concerned, we do need expansion of roads, but not overall as such.
Recently I visited Kudar, just about 30 kilometers from our border. And a place called TP, already a airstrip is being constructed there. I talked to the local leaders and they said, we are happy that MOPA is being scrapped, there is opposition to MOPA. We will have our international airport coming up at Chipi, which is just about 20 kilometers as the crow flies. So whether if you don't have whatever bad things as envisaged by our father and others, that may happen to Goa, if MOPA comes in, will not be prevented, because next door the airport will come. This is one part. And then the lobbies for MOPA, there is an allegation that there are lobbies for MOPA, particularly politicians have purchased land. Not only politicians, but many 5-star and 7-star hotel people have purchased land in Sindhudurga which has already been declared as a tourism district. So they are waiting. If MOPA comes, okay for them. If it doesn't come, Chippy is coming up. And the Chippy, any airport serves about 100 kilometers minimum. So our Goa is included in the Chippy sphere of influence. Next part about this, 6-lane roads. There were national highways in Goa, in India. National highway number 4 was not even 2-lane road at one time. Today it is called the diamond, golden quadrilateral. So it is came 4-lane. Now the work for 6-lane is going on. Same way, national highway number 4, which connects Katgon to Penne. Only in Goa the work has stopped because of our politicking. But right on the border, if you find, it is already 4-lane from Patradevi up to Kudal. And it took me that day just 12 minutes to reach Kudal, which used to take at least 40 to 50 minutes, just about a month back. So, please don't consider Goa as an island. We are on the west coast, and the west coast is developing, whether you want it or you don't want it. And that 4-lane road, 6-lane road will pass through Goa. There's no other way, because whole of coastline is being connected for many reasons. One is tourism, one is economy. Defense is also a part of it. So therefore, what are we going to do by these objections of ours? Let's not have MOPA. Don't have it, Chippy will come. Let's not have Dapoli. You will have one coming up in Karwar. You will have one coming up in Hubli. Belgaum is already having its own airport. Hubli is having its airport. They are all developing. And within the radius of 100 kilometers, any airport, Goa will be affected in a good way or bad way.
Let me remind you that your former chief minister has created an entire vote bank on a communal area in Margao. And every time there's a clearance, he tries to obstruct it. Isn't it an indirect sale of land by a politician then?
So if he has done that, let us denounce it. I would say that. But then look at the entire issue in a much bigger way. We don't want migrants. You want them to come, clean your toilets and go back. Where? This is the issue. Ultimately, in Bombay, next to the skyscrapers, you have that dirty Dharavi and other things. This is a byproduct of the 21st century development. So how to find a balance between the two? And mind you, if I create a vote bank today, my opponent, who has the capacity to pay more, buys it over. And it has happened. It happened in Belgaum, it happened in Margao, it has happened in many other places. So nobody is holier than thou issue. Let us not use that.
Statement on Goa being an island. I would just like to share, probably many of you, I'm presuming, are not aware of what actually took place when our Chief Minister recently met the Prime Minister on special status. I would like here to repeat the conversation which took place between the Prime Minister and what he spoke to our Minister Alina Saldana, because it will make it clear, no paper has reported till now, it will make it clear what actually happened. First and foremost, the meeting was for 40 minutes. Except for Alina, the rest of the delegation went for mining and not for special status. Out of 40 minutes conversation, 35 minutes over was only on the mining. And just before they could shake hands and say goodbye, that memorandum was handed over, which was not signed by anybody. Yes. Now, listen to the conversation between the Prime Minister and the madam who's handing over. That we need special status for Goa because Goa is a special state. He asked which state in India is not a special state. Every state has something special about it. Then she went on further to explain that no, because of this reason. The last statement he made to us, he says, Madam, please remember, and he told the Chief Minister this also, that nobody can touch Goa with a finger because we are a cosmopolitan state. And I mean, this has not been reported, that from here we'll know whether we are getting our special status or no. He said there are people from different parts. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not on that. I'm only reporting something which no newspaper has reported. I think in other words, he has said that we are not getting special status. But the way the papers have reported as if the meeting was for special status, and the Chief Minister made it out like that also, that he is going there for that. And I think the Prime Minister has been very clear that nobody is going to touch Goa, because we have, and he even mentioned that people from all over the world living in harmony. You know, I don't want, because this was a short thing and then finished. They shook hands and that was all. That was it.
Spelling, please.
It becomes an act, whether we like it or not, we are going to have the 6 lanes or 4 lanes, because land will be acquired for infrastructure reasons. I just wanted to know whether the same act can be invoked to retrieve the land that is taken by the foreigners. Can we use this particular act to retrieve the land?
Yes, certainly you can. You can have a scheme and go for it. Issue of Japanese village, and we all oppose that. But then we said, let us have a public purpose vehicle, as Arun Desai is telling about that, and have a ETS and ITS solutions provided so that locals get jobs. That was also opposed on the ground that we don't need IT, whatever. I don't want to go into that, so it will have political repercussions. But then the same people who are objecting IT city there sold their lands, of course with the connivance of the local leaders, political leaders. They could be named if at all it is required. So today, large tracts of that land, entire plateau, almost around say 800 to 900 acres, is gone. And when I go up there now, each person who has bought that land somehow has put barricades, and the present government is making a huge road through that plateau. Obviously, for the purpose of helping those non-governments, upcountry people who have bought those lands. This is absolutely clear, very clear about that. Why? So that if that entire plateau now government says, okay, let me have a scheme there for housing, they can take it over. For what price? For the price for which they have registered that sale deeds, plus add to it some compensation, some more. Is it not possible? So there are, you don't have to wait for special status for these things. We can do it. And we can say, Goan who has resided in Goa for the last say 25 years or 30 years, that is the condition we can put, will be entitled to ask for a piece of land there. And we can stay and enjoy the beauty of the Arabian Sea and the entire natural bounty that place has.
Last question.
By the way, Ms. Nandini asked us to tell your name. My name is Lawrence Fernandez. My question to Mr. Desai is, I know you are trying your best, especially KTCL. What is your financial status on KTCL for last 5 years, for example? And I know it has been always in the red. I don't know whether it is in green now. But the thing is, one reason I'm going to tell you is you will never make profit. Because, see, for example, I heard, or many people heard this before, to hire a conductor, they used to take 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, and odd rupees. Don't ask me who is to take this money, but this was the fact that people paid. So that to recover that money, he has to rob the KTCL. And somehow this was happening. So, do you believe that you will sort of take remedial measures in future to correct this situation, and whether are you in red or still in red, or are you making profit?
KTCL is still in red. Last year they have reported 23 crore loss. Before that it was 19 and 13 and so on. I can go up to 2003-04. Where, see, the whole transport business as such, it works on two things: earning per kilometer and cost per kilometer, CPKM and EPKM. And then if 2003, 4, 5, if I have to mention you, we were into operational profits. Means if you add to social goods what we were doing, we were into profit. Had we not done that, those special trips, to remote villages, we would have been into profit. Then the difference was 1 rupee 15 paisa in between earning per kilometer and cost per kilometer. unfortunately, in the present scenario, it is almost about 6.5 rupees per kilometer. And mind you, they operate around 88,000 kilometers per day. So 88,000 into that 6.5 is the per day loss that it is actually suffering. As far as the recruitment of conductor and drivers is concerned, I would like to make no comments.
Thank you.
Because it's a company which is operating by itself, yeah.
This is the last question. Can I take half a minute?
I think the TDC will always be in the red. Let us have no hope that ever it will be in green because of the fundamental fact nowhere has two systems functioned where you have private and the public going together. You see anywhere. Wherever the private sector is there, public sector has to go in a loss. It's facts. And if you look at Bombay, you look at Karnataka, everywhere. That's the first point. Second point, I think if we can tap the land and the river resources for your transportation, that will be a great help. Because it was there in the past. I think it's a matter of bus lobby dominating the government that has prevented the river navigation from coming up. The bus lobby is very powerful in Goa because it dominates the whole thing going. Secondly, the last point, after hearing Roland, his impassionate, very, straightforward talk, that everything is decided not here in Goa, it is decided in Delhi. And whatever we are fighting here about, the special status at Naboli Airport, we are fighting castles in the air. I think let us concentrate on that and let us see whether we need to focus our attention at the larger level. That is my point. Thank you.
I will give me half a minute just to answer Lawrence. I don't want him to go back with the impression that I raised a question, asked a question to Mr. Kalav and didn't answer it. It was, you said, where were you in 1967? The opinion.
Now you remember.
I don't remember. It was in my mind all the time. It was almost all the time. I didn't want to answer that. But I thought at the end I must tell you. 67, I wasn't in politics. I was a student. Remember, 74, for the first time at the age of 25, I entered the ASEAN. At that time, my MG party had taken a conscious decision to ask for statehood. They had accepted the 1967 opinion poll. Bandodkar is on record. He said, I accept the decision, people's verdict. Now, let us all work for the development of Goa, and the next step is statehood. So this was in 1967. Remember, we died in 1973, 12th August to be precise. This is it. And Nehru had said, he had said, we respect the people of Goa. There is a lot of special things about it, but I don't quote the exact word. But he said, if at all Goa changes, Goans themselves will bring about those changes.
That's what I was talking about.
So, but that is what we have done.
We have not done. We are fighting for rights.
Okay, thank you very much. We've had a very excellent session. I'd like to thank Advocate Ramakant Khalaf for sparing his valuable time to be with us. We hardly get to see him, but thank you very much for having us. Father Rubello for coming here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're very happy that the government participated in every session of ours this time. So please thank the Chief Secretary for providing us. Thank you very much.